Hello everyone. Last time we were modding the game Diablo 1. However, this time we're going to be modding a game by the same people who made it. Yes, we're talking about the authors who left Blizzard. They went and formed a company called Runic, and their next Diablo-like game was Torchlight. And today, I'm going to show you the mod loadout I used for over 100 hours of gameplay. Hold on to your rune blades, we're modding Torchlight. Now the place we're going to be getting our mods today is runicgamesfansite.com. Now I'm going to be listing these mods in order of personal importance. That means how well I felt they contributed to my game and how important I felt they were. There will be a mod download link in the video description that will lead you to zahakuran.com and an article where I have embedded this video and all the appropriate download links. Now the increased potion stack size increases the potion stack size from 20 to 200. Very simple, and it makes it so that your entire inventory isn't filled with potions. This also applies to town portal scrolls and identification scrolls. Although later on, if you are smart, you will have picked up the town portal and identify spells. The next mod I picked up is More Stash. It adds 19 stashes to the main town. Normally you have one treasure chest, which is your stash, and then one extra treasure chest, which is your shared stash among various characters for the purposes of trading, since this is a single player game. Well, how it works now is there's one shared chest and 20 normal stashes. And it doesn't mess with the interface or anything like that like some of other more storage mods do. It keeps everything clean just by duplicating the storage 19 extra times. The Respec potion mod is very simple. The guy who offers you potions and town portals in town, he will also sell a Respec potion, which will allow you to reset all your skills and stats. So if you want to change from, say, a melee build to a magic build, no problem. The biggest out of all the mods is the SSS Textures mod. What this does is it makes everything in the game look better. It's really the closest thing you're going to get to an ENB, I guess. Now, Torchlight is a decent dungeon crawler, but it has a lot of quests, which are all chained together. Unfortunately, it didn't reward you appropriately for completing those quests, and it made me very, very sad. But this mod fixes it. And the items you get for completing quests will almost always feel worth having done the quest. If it's not of worth to you personally, you can sell it. It's not a white or a green like you get in the vanilla game. Now, because you're going to be getting a lot of gold in the game, you must ask yourself, well, what am I going to use all this gold for? You know, these quest rewards, I sell them and they're worth so much. I'm overflowing with gold. Potions don't cost that much. What am I going to do? The answer is enhancing. How the enchanting works in this game is you put an item in the enchantment menu and you have a chance to buff it. And basically it costs an exponentially growing amount of money to keep enchanting it, and there's always a chance when you enchant an item that's going to ruin the item completely. So in order to continually raise things up, you just pump your fortune into uber buffing certain items so that they feel more rewarding when you don't have an equivalent upgrade available yet. Now, simply put, this is an overhaul by the same author that's going to make all the loot and treasures and stuff feel a little more rewarding without really buffing it to the extreme. In general, I felt that the vanilla game selling was one of the main weak points. So in general, I feel that this balances out an otherwise lackluster part of the game. Now, when you've gotten yourself to the most extreme and you feel like you don't have anything left to aspire to, you've gone into the vault, you have done pretty much everything, you can buy these epic boss maps from the map seller. And what they will do is they will transport you to a map where you can fight all of the bosses in the same map. And it's pretty awesome. This is only really an end-game thing. You don't have to buy the maps at all if you don't want to. It just adds them to your game. Now, Jericho's class compilation. What this does is it adds all of the best classes to Torchlight that were made by the community over time. Airbender, Assassin, Barbarian, Demonologist, Enchanter, Executioner, Fury, Guardian, Gunblade, Ice Queen, Kensei, Nethermage, Lady Knight, which is one of my favorites personally, Paladin, which is alright, Shaman, Sorceress, Spirit Dancer, Valkyrie, Warlock, and War Mage. I personally enjoyed the Barbarian, the Demonologist, and the Lady Knight. I highly recommend playing the game's initial 3 classes first, but keep in mind this game uses a retirement system where you're actually able to take a character and retire them. And when you retire them, you lose access to that character. They're, for all intents and purposes, deleted. However, this retired character, their fame goes into the new character, and in addition, they can pass down an item, and it becomes their item. And that item is actually buffed slightly. So you can have a legacy item that is passed down the various characters. And these various characters do not need to be of the same class. So you can actually go through the legacy system using all those extra classes down there. And just go from 1 to 1 to 1 and pick a good item that's usable by, pretty much any of them. And just pass it down the lineage and see it get stronger and stronger and stronger. Of course, if you're playing on hardcore mode, 1 death will kill your legacy, but that's why you don't die. And of course, if you don't want to play hardcore mode, the game is still just as satisfying. But I may judge you personally. Nah, I'm just kidding. But in general, the Runic Games fan site has a lot more mods that I haven't gone over yet. But I thought I'd just provide you guys with the main loadout that I used for about 130 hours of gameplay. Now, in order to install these mods, one of the first things you're going to need to do is enable hidden files. If you don't know how to do that, do a Google search on it. Next, you're going to want to access your computer, the main drive where you installed Windows, and then go to the subdirectory called Users. You might not see Users if you don't have hidden files enabled. Now, underneath the Users subdirectory, you're going to find a named folder for the user you are currently using, the one you installed Torchlight on. Once you've entered your user directory, go ahead and find app data. App data is always a hidden folder. Once in app data, go ahead and find Runic Games. It's usually under roaming. Under Runic Games, go to Torchlight, and under Torchlight, go to mods. If there is not a mods directory under Torchlight, create it, all lowercase, MODS. Every mod you install from the Runic Games fan site should have its own directory there. Note that there is a limit to the number of mods you can have installed at the same time. Once all the mods are installed, you can launch Torchlight. You will notice that the original 3 classes that you were able to play as in Torchlight 1 are still accessible up at the top. However, a whole new scroll bar has the custom classes that you can play as now. I recommend personally that when you are playing a new game, go ahead and play the 3 original classes first in any and all configurations you like, and then move on in successive playthroughs onto the other classes. Now, a word of warning with some of the larger pets, they won't actually be able to get through doorways, and as a result, it will impede your progress in the game. It is recommended that you do not use Ordrock or any of the larger pets, but stick to ones that are either animal or of more reasonable size. For example, cat is fine, undead dwarf is fine, spider is fine, vile bracken is not fine, pygmy is fine, Ordrock is not fine. Now, all of the mods that I've suggested will, when you take full advantage of them, make the game somewhat easier. Keeping that in mind, I do not recommend playing on either easy or normal under any circumstances. If you are new to the game, I recommend hard. If you've played the game for any length of time at all, I recommend very hard. Now, where it says masochists only for very hard, I recommend applying that logic to hardcore. Death is permanent. My preferred playstyle in the game is permanent death on very hard. But if you wanted to play the game mindlessly, then easy is there for you. And normal is really just as easy as easy. Now, all over town you will notice these stashes. Each one is an independent container. Keep in mind that if something happens to your character, say you're using hardcore mode, the only stash remain persistent is the shared stash up here in the front of the town. Now, as a part of this mod loadout, the Soul of the Ancient is a roaming vendor that could appear anywhere in the town of Torchlight, not in the dungeon. The Soul of the Ancient can be thought of as a little cheat vendor. For example, it may take quite some time for the Identify and Town Portal spells to find their way onto a vendor, and rather than subjecting yourself to the random number generator gods, you can go to the Soul of the Ancient and for a much higher price than normal, buy these spells outright. The Soul of the Ancient also sells Respec potions, so say if you misclick and accidentally get a skill you don't want, and you feel like you've ruined your character, you can buy a Respec potion and undo the damage. Now, if you feel that your progress in the game, say you're playing your 4th character, and you just don't like the very beginning of the game when you're weak and you don't have that many skills, the rows of potions here, the luck enhancing potions, the attack enhancing potions, body enhancing, and retribution enhancing potions help you get your character started. Once you start looting unique items, you'll be able to go to the enchanter, take an item, and drag it to the enchanter. Now, when an enchantment fails, it could either do nothing, or, in a catastrophic disenchant, it will actually strip your item of all its enchantments, basically rendering your item worse than when you first got it. The chance for it to disenchant in the default game starts at 0. However, with these enchanting mods, it will start at -2 and work its way up to 0 before going forward. In other words, giving you more time to enchant your gear. In general, the enchanting mod makes enchanting a lot more forgiving, but it'll also get a lot more expensive, and this is by design. So yes, you can have super powerful items, but you have to pay ridiculous amounts of gold for them, and this is where all your gold will go after you become a fountain of gold, after you've reached a level where gold is no longer necessary. This adds a sink for that gold that feels necessary for your character. Now, on the Spirit Vendor, you will find Chaos Gems, however, they will now very commonly drop in the dungeon, and they are randomly generated, meaning that they could be very good, very bad, or mediocre, and they basically replace the standard gems that are in Torchlight. You see, the standard gems that are in Torchlight aren't very good, so this gives you something to work with in the beginning of the game while you're waiting to get the higher quality gems. You can take 4 of one type of classic Torchlight gem and combine them at the transmuter to get the next rank of gem, and so on and so forth, until you've made a max level gem that is better than a chaos gem. But in general, these max level gems really aren't the kind of thing players are going to be looking for as they're going, so to make socketed items not worthless, that's why the chaos gems exist. Now, just like Diablo that had one main dungeon leading down into the depths, so too does Torchlight have a single dungeon that starts off as a mine, goes down into crypts, goes down into a dwarven fortress, and finally into the villain's palace. You should be completing the game by the time your character is about level 30, and although people say Torchlight is incredibly short, there is actually a second dungeon. Traveling out of town, down and around to this corner, you will see what is known as the Vault. There will be a portal here once you complete the main quest, which will lead into an infinite dungeon. The floor at which you enter scales to your character's current level, and then the difficulty of the dungeon continues to increase as you go down. Every level of the dungeon has its own collection quest and monster kill quest. Now to the various custom classes, one of my favorite is the Lady Knight. Now the Lady Knight uses a melee weapon, and she can either use specific skills that bring out the most of that weapon, or magical abilities that deal holy damage. And while she will be able to learn auras and use basic magic skills, for the most part she does stay a melee class. Another class I thoroughly enjoy is the Warlock, which is somewhat like the Alchemist, although he's more demon and curse themed, very similar to the Necromancer in Diablo 2. Now the Warlock has 3 main trees: Agony, Domination, and Chaos. But unlike the main classes of Torchlight 2, these skills do not scale with his weapon damage, and they are almost entirely magical in nature. This means that while other classes have the ability to be either ranged, melee, or magic, he is pretty much stuck in the role of magic. And while he can gain competency bonuses with ranged with Demonic Mastery Guile and Demonic Mastery Might for melee, he will still remain skilled primarily for magic. Now if you want to see something like the Vanquisher class, except male, and using guns and explosives, the Stone Brother is the one to use. The Stone Brother can use grenades, minefields, flame grenades, powder cocktail, ice grenades, and hand cannons. Using a rifle as his primary weapon, he will get stronger and stronger as he levels up. Now, all of these custom classes pretty much work the same way when you level up. You get 5 stat points when you level up and 1 skill point. So what you can do is you can put 3 points into the stat you prefer and 2 points into defense. By doing this, you keep your defense scaled up well, but you're also focusing only on the stat that benefits your playstyle. Melee users will always choose strength, ranged users, such as the Stone Brother, will always use dexterity, and magic is for the various magic builds. Note that among the original 3 classes in Torchlight, they can each use melee, ranged, or magic, depending on which skill tree they focus in, whereas the custom classes tend to be more focused on one specialization or another, such as this Stone Brother here, who will only ever use dexterity and defense. So Torchlight is more or less Diablo 1.5, and actually has such modding support that you actually get an achievement when you start the game up with a mod installed. I'm not saying the mods I've chosen here are the best mods, I'm merely saying that these mods have seen me through hundreds of hours of game content. If you play Torchlight for what it is, a very hands-off isometric action RPG, with some very light storytelling in between massively killing enemies, getting loot, enhancing that loot, selling the loot, you're going to have a damn fun game. Just a reminder, there will be a link in the video description here to zahakuran.com, my website, where you will find links to all the various mods used in this installation. And eventually we will be having the same conversation about Torchlight 2. But until then, I'll see y'all next time.